A millionaire's mistress left a telltale smudge of lipstick on his collar. His pregnant wife, upon discovering it, extended a chillingly polite invitation, dinner for all three. In the opulent, echoing halls of the Vanderbilt estate, no one ever suspected the tranquil facade was about to crumble so disastrously on a single, fateful evening. Yet, in the hushed ambience of a candlelit dining room, overlooking the rolling, mist-covered hills outside Seattle, three lives converged in a perfect storm of deeply buried secrets, raw betrayal, and a vengeance that simmered just beneath the surface. Ethan Vanderbilt, heir to a billion-dollar real estate empire, returned home one fateful night with an all-too-obvious trail of crimson on his crisp, white collar. His pregnant wife, Olivia, noticed it immediately. Instead of erupting in anger, she issued a gracious, yet undeniably cryptic, invitation. Both Ethan and his mystery lover would dine with her, together. It all began on a cool October evening, when the skies loomed gray and heavy over Seattle, drenching the city in a constant, melancholic drizzle. The Vanderbilt estate, a gleaming testament to generations of old money and modern excess, rose from the gloom, all white walls and towering windows, set majestically behind imposing wrought iron gates. It was the ancestral seat of the Vanderbilt family, who had made their formidable name in real estate, shrewd tech investments, and more philanthropic endeavors than the average Seattle socialite could readily count. At its heart resided Ethan Vanderbilt, the 35-year-old scion, who had married the stunning Olivia Hayes just a year prior. In one fell swoop, their wedding had blended prominent West Coast aristocracy with the quiet elegance of an established East Coast lineage. That night, Ethan parked his sleek black Aston Martin inside the cavernous family garage and made his way up the polished marble steps into the grand foyer. The hush of the house felt more pronounced, almost unnervingly silent than usual. The staff had gone home for the evening. Olivia had insisted they be given a week off to celebrate her pregnancy, so the couple could have some much-needed time alone and reevaluate the frenetic pace of their lives. The echoes of Ethan's expensive leather shoes clacked across the polished floor as he mentally rehearsed his well-worn excuses, a late meeting that ran over, an emergency conference call with overseas associates, property negotiations that had dragged on interminably. But something about his carefully prepared script felt hollow, disingenuous even to him, as he passed the enormous, gilt-framed mirror in the foyer. A sharp pang of anxiety flared in his chest. He saw it then the faintest, damning slash of red across his pristine white collar. Lipstick. He cursed under his breath, scrubbing furiously at the mark with his thumb. But the smear only brightened, a stark, undeniable symbol of his indiscretion. His mistress, Savannah Cole, had pressed a hasty, passionate goodbye kiss to his shoulder as she slipped out the door of her chic downtown penthouse. And he'd been too distracted, too caught up in the moment, to notice. By the time he reached the expansive living room, the silence felt utterly suffocating. He sensed Olivia's presence before he actually saw her. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her gaze fixed on the sloping, manicured gardens outside, tall and graceful, dressed in a pale silk robe that clung elegantly to her 4 months pregnant figure. Her long, dark hair spilled in gentle waves down her back. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes scanning him with a level, knowing gaze that sent a shiver down his spine. "Ethan," she greeted softly. "I waited up." His heart knocked painfully in his chest. "I'm sorry, darling. Work ran late." "Oh." Her tone was mild, almost deceptively so, but her lips curved in the faintest, enigmatic of smiles. She gestured for him to come closer. "Let's go sit. You look tired." He hesitated for a fraction of a second, terrified she would notice the lipstick or smell the faint, lingering perfume that definitely wasn't hers. But, perhaps foolishly, he followed. They settled on a plush white sofa, a cherished inheritance from Olivia's grandmother that had come all the way from her family's ancestral home on the East Coast. For a few tense moments, they discussed innocuous subjects, the baby's occasional kicking, the evolving color scheme for the nursery, Ethan's father's upcoming birthday. Ethan tried desperately to regain his composure, carefully steering the conversation. But the hush that fell between sentences carried 1,000 unspoken, uncomfortable truths. Finally, Olivia trailed her delicate fingers over his collar. The world seemed to spin on its axis. She rubbed at the incriminating smear of crimson and then looked directly into his eyes, without a hint of rage. "Is that lipstick?" she asked, her tone as smooth and cool as polished stone. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. 1,000 excuses, all worthless, fought for release. Should he feign ignorance? Should he blame a colleague's playful prank at a late-night meeting? His mind spun, desperately seeking an escape. But something about Olivia's composure was far more unsettling than any outburst of anger could have been. "It must have," he began, but his throat felt like sandpaper. "I'm sorry." She gazed at him for a long, piercing moment, her eyes unblinking. Then, in an elegant, fluid movement, she stood, the silk robe lightly swaying around her legs. "There's no need for excuses. Ethan, I can see what it is." Ethan stared at her in dread, bracing himself for the inevitable explosion. But instead, she drew a steady, deliberate breath and said, "I think we should have dinner together. You, me, and her." He blinked, a wave of utter confusion crashing over him. "What are you talking about?" "Your mistress," Olivia murmured, her voice devoid of inflection. "She's obviously important enough for you to risk everything. Let's invite her here, to the house, tomorrow night. Perhaps. I like to get to know the woman who leaves her mark on my husband's collar." The measured calmness in her voice unnerved him more than any screaming match ever could have. Ethan had never seen his wife, proud and often fiery as she was, so icily, unnervingly resolved. "Why?" he whispered, the word barely audible. "You owe me this courtesy, don't you think?" she responded, her tone never wavering. Then, laying a gentle, protective hand on her abdomen. She added, "I'm not just your wife. Ethan, I'm the mother of your child. Don't you think I have a right to understand who else is in our lives?" Ethan's mind reeled. He was equal parts terrified and utterly mystified. There was a part of him that desperately wanted to believe she was bluffing, that she would break down crying or fling furious accusations at any moment. But Olivia had always been a woman of surprising depth and unexpected actions. He nodded weakly, still unable to form a coherent argument. "Tomorrow," she repeated, her voice firm. "Dinner at 7. And with that, she turned, leaving him alone in the crushing hush, with only the faint, lingering scent of her jasmine perfume and the echo of her departing steps to remind him that she was anything but naive. Savannah Cole sank into her designer leather sofa, anxiously scrolling through her phone. She was 28, with striking, almond-shaped eyes, dark hair cut into an immaculate bob, and a fierce, unyielding ambition that had propelled her from a modest background to the very cusp of wealth. Born in a small town in the Midwest, she moved to Seattle in her early 20s, utterly determined to break into the city's upper echelons of society. Her method was as old as time itself. She set her sights on a powerful, influential man. Ethan Vanderbilt proved to be just the prize she sought, a man who'd inherited a real estate empire worth billions. Their affair began innocently enough, or so she told herself. They met at a glittering charity gala hosted by the Seattle Art Museum, introduced by a mutual acquaintance, Victoria Sterling, an up-and-coming philanthropist who had a keen eye for matchmaking profitable liaisons. Amidst the swirl of clinking cocktail glasses and hushed conversations, Savannah's cunning magnetism drew Ethan in. She knew exactly how to flatter his ego, how to make him feel seen. One drink led to another, and soon they had exchanged more than just polite conversation in the museum's secluded courtyard, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight. Savannah wasn't foolish. She understood the inherent danger. Ethan was newly married, his wife pregnant with their first child. But Savannah had convinced herself that Ethan was nothing more than a strategic rung on the ladder, a convenient sponsor who could help her open doors in the city's most exclusive, impenetrable circles. Yet, as the nights of secret, illicit passion accumulated, she found herself increasingly, unexpectedly enthralled by him. For once, it wasn't just about the money or the access. She began to imagine, with a dangerous frequency, what it would be like to stand beside him in public. As his partner, would he ever leave his wife? Could he? That evening, as she stared at the missed call from Ethan on her phone, a cold shiver of apprehension rippled through her. They'd parted ways earlier in the night, but something in Ethan's voice message rang deeply ominous. She pressed play and listened to the short, tense request, "Savannah, please call me back. We need to talk. Now. Olivia, she wants you to come to dinner tomorrow. She knows. Please, just call me." Her heartbeat stumbled, faltering in her chest. She replayed it 3 times, each repetition only magnifying her profound unease. She had never anticipated Olivia would discover the affair so soon. if at all. She couldn't fathom a wife so preternaturally calm that she'd actually invite her husband's mistress to dinner. Women in the rarefied circles Savannah now orbited would either pretend not to know, maintaining a brittle facade, or unleash vicious, reputation-shredding drama in the tabloids. But an invitation to dinner. This was uncharted, terrifying territory. Savannah dialed Ethan's number with trembling fingers. He answered on the first ring. "What's going on?" she demanded, her voice wavering despite her best efforts to sound composed. He exhaled, a sound heavy with defeat. "Olivia found the lipstick on my collar. She's not angry in the way I expected." He paused. "She's invited you to dinner tomorrow. At our home." Savannah's breath hitched. "Ethan, is this some kind of trap?" "I have no idea," Ethan replied, sounding every bit as anxious as she felt. "But trust me, Savannah, Olivia doesn't make idle threats or empty gestures. She's serious. She wants to meet you, to talk to you." Silence fell, thick and heavy, between them. Savannah's mind spun with a dizzying array of disastrous possibilities. If she refused, Olivia might destroy her socially, a fate she couldn't bear. If she went, it might be even worse. But after a long, agonizing pause, she forced a shaky sigh. "I'll come. I can't pretend this isn't happening." Neither one said goodbye. The call ended in a cloud of mutual, palpable foreboding. Savannah stared out into the glittering city lights from her penthouse window, the reflection of her own face in the glass appearing small, pale, and uncertain. She had always pictured herself winning, achieving a comfortable, envied life of wealth and privilege. Now, she felt like a vulnerable pawn, caught between two cunning, powerful players in a high-stakes game she only half understood. The following morning dawned bleak and overcast, the pervasive Seattle gloom casting long, somber shadows across the expansive Vanderbilt estate. Inside the glass and marble mansion, Olivia oversaw every minute detail of the dinner preparation with a methodical, almost unnerving grace. Even though the household staff was on leave, she had summoned just two trusted individuals, Chef Antoine, renowned from a nearby Michelin-starred restaurant, and her longtime, fiercely loyal friend, Emily Carter, to act as a server for the evening. Emily had known Olivia since their boarding school days back east. She regarded Ethan's affair with a barely contained, simmering fury. "Olivia, why are you putting yourself through this?" she demanded, her voice tight with concern, as she helped arrange the imposing dinner table large, gleaming slab of polished mahogany that could comfortably seat 30, though tonight it would only seat 3. Olivia carefully positioned the crystal water glasses, her movements precise. "Because, Emily, I want control," she answered simply, her voice quiet but firm. "If I react with overt anger, I lose the upper hand. Ethan expects me to cry or scream. And she," Olivia spat the word with a quiet, controlled venom, "probably expects something equally dramatic, too. But I refuse to let them rewrite my story. I will define the terms of this confrontation." Emily shook her head, a stray piece of silverware clattering onto the table from her unsteady hand. You're stronger than I could ever be. Olivia. Olivia's eyes flicked up, meeting her friends. Strength comes in many forms. Emily, this baby, she gestured to her stomach, has given me a profound sense of purpose. I won't lose everything I've built, everything we've built, because of a naive, reckless fling. She recalled her family's history, how they had faced significant hardship generations ago, but had rebuilt their fortunes on the East Coast through sheer grit and business acumen, instilling in their daughter a steely determination that now glowed like a forge in her heart. She had met Ethan Vanderbilt at a charity regatta in Newport, and it had felt like fate. Both came from families that had, in their own ways, rebuilt themselves. She had believed they were soulmates, that they would inherently understand each other's ambitions, each other's hidden scars. Now, she was forced to question the very depth of that supposed understanding. As the day wore on, Chef Antoine and Emily put the finishing touches on an elegant, sophisticated three-course menu, perfectly roasted salmon in a delicate lemon butter sauce, a lightly dressed garden salad with artisanal greens, and a decadent dessert of salted caramel creme brulee. Olivia chose a striking cobalt blue cocktail dress that draped gracefully over her growing belly and pinned her dark hair into a sleek, polished chignon. She surveyed herself in her bedroom mirror. Tonight, she would look every inch the poised, unflappable hostess. But beneath the carefully constructed surface, her heart pulsed with a potent cocktail of adrenaline and trepidation. By the time dusk settled, the estate was perfectly, almost theatrically, staged for the strangest dinner party in Seattle's recent high society memory. Candlelight flickered across the polished floors, casting dancing shadows. Scented lilies graced the foyer, their heavy perfume mingling with an almost palpable air of quiet tension that crackled like static electricity. Emily placed 3 settings at the far end of the massive table and intimate, almost claustrophobic arrangement that would bring them all painfully, uncomfortably close. Olivia glided into the grand foyer, poised and ready to greet her guests, her husband, who had conveniently disappeared for the afternoon, claiming urgent business errands, and the woman who had shattered the sacredness of their marriage. Savannah Cole arrived in a sleek, anonymous silver rental car, having wisely decided her usual ostentatious red Tesla would draw far too much unwanted attention. She wore an impeccably fitted black dress that whispered alluringly against her curves understated, yet undeniably sophisticated. Her perfectly bobbed hair, set off by a single, Ditske Diamond Philippe, glistened in the warm, welcoming glow of the mansion's exterior lights. As the massive, ornate front doors swept open, Savannah felt a distinct tremor roll through her. In the vast marble foyer stood Olivia Vanderbilt, simultaneously welcoming and utterly terrifying. Her posture regal, her face a carefully composed, unreadable mask. "Good evening, Olivia," Savannah said as calmly as she could manage, extending a slender, manicured hand. Olivia swallowed hard and shook it. The contact was brief, almost chillingly cold. And in that fleeting moment, Savannah saw both quiet, icy wrath and a profoundly dignified courtesy warring behind Olivia's expressive eyes. "Thank you for having me," Savannah managed, though the polite, conventional phrase felt utterly absurd under the circumstances. Olivia stepped back and motioned gracefully for Savannah to enter. "Please, come inside. Ethan is in the study. He'll join us shortly. May I take your coat?" Savannah nodded, shrugging off a light cashmere jacket and handing it over. She glanced around, taking in the soaring ceilings, the priceless, tastefully arranged antiques, the sheer, unapologetic opulence of the Vanderbilt home. She noticed pointedly that no staff bustled about. Just Olivia's friend, Emily Carter, who hovered quietly near the doorway to the kitchen. It heightened the unnerving sense that this was an intensely personal matter, not some grand social affair. Olivia led her through a short, art-lined corridor into a lavish, yet formal, sitting room. A gilded clock on the mantelpiece chimed softly, the sound echoing in the otherwise profound silence. The hush felt deafening, and the quiet rasp of Olivia's own controlled breath seemed to echo off the cold marble floors. "Would you like something to drink?" Olivia offered, gesturing gracefully toward a well-stocked drinks cart laden with chilled, sparkling water and an expensive bottle of red wine. "I can ask Emily to bring you a glass." Savannah's voice quavered slightly. "Sparkling water. Please. Thank you." Olivia poured the drink herself, the subtle fizz of the bubbles punctuating the heavy silence. She handed the crystal glass to Savannah and then sank gracefully onto a nearby chaise lounge, crossing her ankles with careful, deliberate poise. Savannah perched precariously on the edge of a nearby armchair, her posture tight and defensive. Neither woman spoke for a long, agonizing moment. At last, Olivia's voice, cool and clear, cut through the quiet. "You must have questions, Savannah." Savannah lowered her gaze, unable to meet Olivia's direct stare. I'm sorry that." Olivia held up a hand, effectively silencing her. "We'll address apologies later." She inhaled slowly, deliberately, and continued, "I want to know what you intend. What does this relationship with my husband mean to you?" It was such a direct, unvarnished question that Savannah's mouth went instantly dry. She wanted to say that she and Ethan were deeply in love, that Olivia should gracefully step aside, but she couldn't force the audacious words past her lips. She sensed, with a chilling certainty, that Olivia was no fragile, wilting victim. Instead, she forced out, I care about him, but I never meant to." Olivia's gaze flicked meaningfully toward her own gently rounded belly. "You never meant to what?" She repeated, her tone chillingly, unnervingly controlled. Savannah hesitated, searching for the right words. "I never meant to hurt you, or to come between you, especially not now that you're expecting. It just happened." Olivia's lips compressed into a thin, hard line, awry, Humorless smile quivered at the corners of her mouth. Things like this never just happen. Savannah. They are the result of choices. Step by deliberate step. Little betrayals piling up until a significant line is irrevocably crossed. A tense, suffocating hush fell over the room. The friction in the air felt alive, almost sentient, buzzing with the weight of unspoken fury and profound hurt. Savannah braced herself for an onslaught of accusations. For cursing, or perhaps even a tearful, dramatic meltdown. But Olivia simply nodded, almost imperceptibly, as if she already knew all the answers. As if Savannah's faltering explanations were merely a tedious formality. They both turned as the distinct sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his expression grim, his face pale. He took in the scene before him his wife and his mistress, seated in what appeared to be polite, strained conversation, like mere acquaintances at an awkward social function. It felt utterly, jarringly surreal. "Hello, Savannah," he said, his voice hoarse as he cleared his throat. "Thank you for coming." She stared at him, her pulse roaring in her ears, completely uncertain how to respond. Olivia stood, gliding gracefully across the room to place a hand, almost possessively, on her husband's shoulder. She seemed to weigh him in her glance, as if silently deciding whether he was worth defending or condemning. "Let's move to the dining room," she announced, her voice regaining its hostess-like composure. "Dinner is served." Dinner was a meticulously, almost painfully, choreographed performance of strained civility. The grand dining room was bathed in the soft, flattering glow of candlelight. The table set for three, an arrangement so intimate that they could see every fleeting flicker of emotion in each other's eyes. Chef Antoine had prepared the meal to perfection, but no one appeared to have much of an appetite. Olivia eased herself gracefully into her seat at the head of the table, her pregnancy more apparent now under the clinging fabric of her dress. Ethan sat to her right, Savannah to her left. Emily hovered discreetly nearby with a pitcher of iced water, her face etched with worried lines. Once they were served, the only sound for a few agonizing, interminable moments were the soft, almost apologetic clinks of expensive cutlery on fine china plates. Finally, Olivia broke the oppressive silence with a question that sliced through the palpable tension like a shard of ice. "How long have you two been seeing each other?" Ethan immediately set his fork down with a clatter. Savannah stiffened, her posture rigid. Neither answered immediately, until Savannah, summoning a sliver of courage, forced herself to speak. 6 months. Olivia inclined her head slowly, her expression unreadable. "I thought so." Ethan swallowed hard, desperately seeking her eyes. "Olivia." She turned her gaze fully on him, not with overt anger, but with a penetrating, assessing calm that made him visibly flinch. "Ethan, I want the truth. For once, did you plan on leaving me? Or was this simply a passing indulgence?" Ethan's face went ashen, He struggled visibly for composure, his Adam's apple bobbing. It, it was never my intention to leave you. Olivia. I was confused. Work's been incredibly stressful. We've been distant. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. Savannah let out a strangled, bitter laugh. A harsh sound that was a disturbing mixture of deep hurt and raw bitterness. A mistake. You told me you felt trapped. Ethan, you said you weren't happy in this marriage, that it was something forced upon you by family pressures and expectations. Which is it? Olivia's eyes, sharp and intelligent, flicked between them, observing, absorbing. Ethan clenched his fists under the table, feeling pinned under both women's intense gazes like a butterfly on a board. Savannah. I might have said things in the heat of the moment. He muttered, his voice low and strained. But it doesn't mean I ever intended to walk away from my responsibilities. From my family. A heavy hush fell, broken only by the faint, almost imperceptible rustling of the table linens as Emily, sensing the rising tension, quietly refilled their water glasses. Olivia took in a slow, measured breath, not allowing Ethan's faltering words to fully register on her carefully composed face. She had feared heartbreak, but the stark reality of hearing these admissions, he felt trapped. He whispered sweet nothings to another woman cut deeper than any open wound could. Yet, she pressed on, resolutely forging a path through her own personal devastation. Savannah, do you love him? It was the question that left Savannah utterly stunned. Her mouth slightly agape. Did she love him? The complex swirl of complicated, conflicting feelings collided violently in her mind. Genuine admiration, undeniable lust, a sharp pang of envy, a potent desire for his power and status, fleeting glimpses of genuine warmth, love. At last, she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know. Maybe. It was a non-answer. Perhaps. But it was honest. The acute dryness in her throat threatened to choke her. Olivia's lips curled into a sad, almost pitying approximation of a smile. That's what I thought. She set down her silverware with finality and folded her hands neatly on the table, her eyes flicking from one to the other as though pondering a final, irrevocable verdict. I spent the last few months wondering why my husband was so distant. She began quietly, her voice laced with a profound sorrow, wondering if it was me, if I was somehow failing him as a wife, if the pregnancy had irrevocably thrown off the delicate balance in our relationship. I second-guessed everything: my body, my ambitions, my very worth. Ethan glanced away, shame etched deeply across his features. Savannah felt her chest tighten with an unfamiliar, unwelcome pang of empathy. Olivia continued, her voice gaining strength. Now I see that you both are equally confused, equally lost, about what you really want. She took a moment to press a hand gently to her abdomen, as if grounding herself in the undeniable presence of the child within her. But I am not confused. I know exactly what I want to protect my family, my child, and my future. Her eyes, now hard and resolute, lit on Ethan. I am willing to overlook this detour if you are truly, unequivocally committed to rebuilding our marriage. But I need your honest vow. Ethan, no more secrets, no more lies, no more games, or I walk away. And believe me, her voice dropped to a steely whisper. I won't go quietly. The unspoken threat hung like a crackle of lightning in the tense air. Ethan's mind reeled, torn between crushing guilt and an overwhelming sense of relief. He reached across the table, his hand trembling, and tentatively wrapped his fingers around Olivia's. I promise, Olivia, this was a mistake, a colossal, unforgivable mistake. I swear, I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, to earn back your trust. Olivia watched him for a long, assessing moment, evaluating his sincerity, the desperation in his eyes. Then, she turned her formidable gaze to Savannah. And you, she said, her voice now devoid of any warmth. You should know that if you continue to involve yourself with my husband in any way, I will ensure that every single advantage you've painstakingly gained in this city will disappear overnight. I have resources, Savannah, considerable resources, and I am not afraid to use them. Savannah's cheeks flared with a sudden, hot heat. She felt a tight coil of anger unfurl in her gut. How dare Olivia threaten her hard-won ambitions? But cold, pragmatic reason quickly trumped her rising fury. She was, undeniably, on the losing side here. She had no illusions about the power of the Vanderbilt name. A Vanderbilt scorned could ruin her socially, financially, and politically, without a second thought. I understand, Savannah said quietly, unexpected tears pricking the corners of her eyes. I never wanted to hurt anyone. Olivia stared at her a heartbeat longer, her expression unyielding, then gave a curt, almost dismissive nod. She rose gracefully from the table, picking up her linen napkin, the clear signal that dinner was effectively, and mercifully, concluded. Then you'll leave now, she said in a measured, even tone. I think Ethan and I have more to discuss in private. Savannah felt a tremor pass through her. She stood, fumbling awkwardly to gather her purse. Her composure shattered. Ethan deliberately avoided her gaze, shame coloring his face a deep, mottled red. Olivia walked her to the massive front door, as silent and imposing as a specter at a funeral. Outside, a fierce, cold wind whipped across the long, circular driveway. Savannah paused on the top step, turning back to look at Olivia one last time. In the stark glow of the porch light, Olivia's expression was no longer one of controlled, icy politeness. The raw anguish and profound betrayal swirled tumultuously in her eyes, making them as stormy and unpredictable as the skies overhead. Yet, she managed to stand tall, defiant, even as her hand rested protectively over her growing belly. Neither woman spoke a word of farewell. Savannah hurried down the steps, the heavy door closing behind her with a quiet, final click. Once Savannah was gone, Ethan exhaled a ragged breath he didn't even realize he'd been holding. He turned his wife, guilt saturating every inch of his posture, making him feel physically heavy. She took a hesitant step toward him, her beautiful eyes brimming with the tears she had so valiantly fought back all evening. Before she could speak, he reached for her, pulling her into his arms, half expecting her to resist, to push him away. But she allowed him to hold her, though her body remained stiff, unyielding in his embrace. She buried her face in his chest, and he felt the unmistakable tremor of silent, heartbreaking sobs rack her frame. "I'm so sorry," he whispered brokenly, stroking her soft hair. "I'm so sorry, Olivia. I never meant to." She pulled back, wiping her tears with the back of her hand, her face a mask of pain. "You never meant to, Ethan, but you did," she managed, her voice shaking uncontrollably. "And it'll take a hell of a lot more than just words for me to ever trust you again." He nodded, words utterly failing him. The night had laid bare all their festering secrets, but something still simmered ominously beneath the surface. A significant part of Ethan's mind clung stubbornly to guilt, not only for the affair itself, but for the insidious half-truths he'd spun to Savannah that he felt trapped in his marriage, that he was unsure about fatherhood. He had allowed that corrosive darkness to overshadow the genuine, profound love he once felt, and perhaps still did, for Olivia. He gently led her back to the dining room, where the candles still flickered, casting long, mournful shadows. Emily had discreetly disappeared, presumably to give them privacy. The partially eaten plates of exquisite salmon remained, but both seemed too emotionally wrecked to notice. Olivia sank wearily into a chair, her trembling fingers toying nervously with the stem of her crystal water glass. "I can't live like this, Ethan," she murmured, fresh tears glistening on her long lashes. "I gave you the chance to own up to your mistake, to be honest, so that we could try to move forward. But that doesn't magically erase the betrayal, the humiliation." He crouched beside her, gently capturing her hand in his. "Tell me what I need to do," he pleaded, his voice rough with unshed tears. "Anything, Olivia. I'll do anything." She closed her eyes, the deep tension in her brow softening almost imperceptibly, and whispered, "I need time, Ethan, and I need absolute, unvarnished honesty. Promise me, right now, that there are no other secrets, no other lies." Ethan bowed his head, a profound wave of unexpected relief washing over him. He had mentally prepared himself for the worst, had even told Savannah that the dinner would likely end in utter disaster, that Olivia might demand a divorce on the spot. But here she was, unbelievably, offering him a lifeline, a chance he knew in his heart he didn't deserve. "I promise," he said hoarsely. "No more secrets. I'll earn your forgiveness, Olivia, day by painstaking day, if that's what it takes." Olivia's lips trembled, but she gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Then we try to move forward," she said, her voice barely audible. For the sake of our family. They embraced once more, a hug fraught with uncertainty, both unsure what the fractured future would hold. In the strained days that followed, Ethan tried to bury himself in a relentless flurry of work closing deals, meeting with anxious investors, visiting properties currently in development. Meanwhile, Olivia immersed herself completely in preparations for the baby. They existed in the same cavernous house, tiptoeing carefully around old wounds, both grimly determined to maintain a fragile, uneasy peace. Inevitably, word of the bizarre, tension-filled dinner leaked out among a few close, gossipy circles in Seattle's high society. Emily Carter had, in a moment of shared frustration, confided in her husband, David Carter, who also happened to be a close friend of Ethan's. David, appalled by the situation, confronted Ethan one evening at an exclusive members-only lounge. "What the hell were you thinking, Mun?" he demanded, his voice low but intense, over a tumbler of expensive whiskey. "You have a beautiful, pregnant wife at home, a woman who adores you." Ethan could only shrug, shame burning hotly in his cheeks. "I messed up, David. Royally. I'm trying to fix it." But while Ethan desperately tried to salvage his crumbling marriage, a new, insidious threat emerged. Savannah Cole was not as willing to slink away quietly into the shadows as Olivia. And perhaps Ethan had hoped. She had tasted power and affluence, however fleetingly, and she wasn't about to let a single, humiliating confrontation define her next move. Within a week, she showed up, unannounced and unwelcome, at Ethan's corporate office in downtown Seattle. She wore a crisp, tailored business suit and exuded an aura of poised, steely determination that immediately rattled him. She cornered him in the hallway, pointedly ignoring the curious stares of passing employees. "What are you doing here?" Ethan hissed, gripping her elbow none too gently and guiding her into an empty, thankfully soundproof, conference room. Savannah yanked her arm free, her eyes flashing with a dangerous combination of fear and defiance. "I need to talk to you," she insisted, her voice tight. "I'm in trouble, Ethan. Serious trouble." He frowned, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. "What do you mean?" She paced the length of the room, her agitation palpable, nervously biting her lower lip. "Someone's threatened me. A phone call, in the middle of the night. A man's distorted voice, telling me that if I don't leave Seattle immediately, I'll regret it. Deeply." Ethan's eyes widened in genuine alarm. "Did you go to the police?" Savannah let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "And tell them what?" "Ethan, that I was your mistress and that your very resourceful wife probably hired someone to intimidate me. You think that little tidbit won't end up splashed across every sleazy gossip site in the city within hours?" Ethan's stomach twisted into a painful knot. Olivia had indeed said she'd do anything to protect her family. But would she really go so far as to threaten Savannah? To hire someone? Olivia wouldn't stoop to this. He said, though the distinct edge of uncertainty in his own voice betrayed him. She's upset, understandably, but she's not the type to hire a thug. Savannah snorted derisively, folding her arms across her chest. You'd be surprised what people will do when everything they hold dear is on the line. I have a very strong suspicion that she, or someone very close to her, is behind this. Look, Ethan, I'm not trying to meddle in your marriage anymore. I swear. But I'm not going to be run out of town like some common criminal either. You need to find out who's threatening me. Or you need to tell Olivia to call off her dogs. Otherwise, her voice dropped to a menacing level. I'll have no choice but to go public with our entire affair. And trust me, Ethan, that will make everything you've so carefully built come crashing down around your ears. Leaving the conference room, Ethan felt the crushing weight of Savannah's ultimatum pressing down on his chest. He couldn't truly imagine Olivia so poised, so stoic, so fiercely proud, resorting to anonymous, menacing midnight threats. Yet, the alternative, that's someone else, perhaps a jealous colleague or a ruthless competitor looking to exploit the burgeoning scandal, was pulling the strings, was equally unsettling. That night, he confronted Olivia in their opulent bedroom. He watched her carefully fold tiny baby clothes into a polished mahogany dresser. She was wearing a loose, comfortable floral robe, her dark hair falling softly over one shoulder. She looked serene, almost angelic, but he knew from bitter experience that a ferocious storm could lurk behind those deceptively calm eyes. Olivia, he began softly, choosing his words with extreme care. Savannah, she says she's received threats, that someone warned her to leave Seattle. Olivia's expression sharpened instantly, but she didn't pause in her task. Oh. She suggested it might be you. Olivia let out a long, slow breath. Ethan, if I wanted to ruin her, and believe me, the thought has crossed my mind, I wouldn't make some clumsy, anonymous phone call in the middle of the night. That's amateurish. Beneath me, I have far better, more effective resources than that. Her voice was unervingly calm, but the underlying insinuation sparked a distinct chill in Ethan's gut. So, it wasn't you. He pressed, needing to hear her deny it unequivocally. She turned to face him fully, crossing her arms over her chest. No, Ethan, it wasn't. I promised you I'd try to take the high road. But I also told you, very clearly, that I'd do whatever was necessary to protect our family. If I made a move against Savannah Cole, you would know it. It wouldn't be some petty, anonymous phone call. Ethan studied her carefully, searching her face for any flicker of deceit, any telltale sign. Then who else would do this? He asked, genuinely perplexed. She shook her head slowly, stepping closer, her hand going to his arm in a surprisingly gentle gesture. Ethan, I'm not the only person in this city who cares about you, or about the Vanderbilt name and reputation. Maybe your father heard rumors. Maybe it's a disgruntled business rival looking to stir up controversy and gain an advantage. There are far more possibilities than you currently realize. He sighed deeply, wrapping an arm around her waist, feeling the gentle, reassuring swell of her pregnancy against him. I just want this nightmare to be over, he admitted, his voice weary. Olivia nodded, her expression softening. We both do. Ethan, we both do. A few days later, an unexpected visitor arrived at Savannah's sleek penthouse apartment. She answered the door to find Victoria Sterling, the very woman who had orchestrated her introduction to Ethan that fateful night at the Seattle Art Museum Gala. Victoria stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Her tall, willowy frame draped in an expensive, fashionable coat, her posture exuding an air of self-assured, almost predatory, cunning. Savannah offered a nervous, hesitant smile. Victoria, I wasn't expecting to see you. It's been months. Victoria glanced around the lavish, impeccably decorati interior, arching a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. So, this is what a piece of the Vanderbilt fortune bought you, she observed, her tone a curious mixture of admiration and thinly veiled sarcasm. Savannah quickly closed the door. I didn't invite you here. Victoria, what do you want? A sly, knowing grin curved Victoria's lips. Information. Mostly. I've heard some rather interesting rumors. Savannah. Rumors that you're being threatened. That you might be inclined to cause a rather significant scandal for the esteemed Vanderbilts if you don't back down quietly. Savannah's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Who's been talking? Victoria strolled casually around the living room, trailing her long, manicured fingers along the supple leather back of an Eames armchair. Oh, people talk. Savannah, darling, this city's elite is a surprisingly small, incestuous circle, and I happen to know, from reliable sources, that you're in a rather precarious, shall we say, delicate position. Olivia Vanderbilt is no pushover, despite her refined exterior. If she truly wants to crush you, believe me, she can, and she will. I came to offer my assistance. Savannah let out a short, bitter laugh. Help? Why on earth would you want to help me? Victoria's dark, intelligent eyes gleamed with an unmistakable ambition. Because, my dear, the Vanderbilts possess an inordinate amount of power and money. And let's just say I'm not exactly on their Christmas card list. I introduced you to Ethan as a casual favor to an old acquaintance, never for a moment foreseeing it would escalate into this rather public fiasco. If I can somehow manage to get something advantageous for myself out of the ensuing chaos, well, all the better. And perhaps, just perhaps, I can help you keep your pretty little head above water in the process. Savannah studied her carefully, remembering how Victoria always seemed to skillfully gain from every situation she involved herself in, no matter how messy. I'm listening. Victoria took a seat, crossing her long legs elegantly. I could put you in contact with a very good, very discreet journalist I know at the Seattle Tribune. If Olivia, or someone else in their camp, is indeed threatening you, the press might just work in your favor. Leverage. You understand. But you have to move quickly. Savannah. Before they find a way to shut you down permanently. Savannah felt her heart thud heavily in her chest. She vividly recalled her heated conversation with Ethan. How she'd impulsively used the threat of going public as leverage. The idea, in reality, frightened her more than she'd ever admitted, even to herself. It could very well mean social and professional suicide for her. But maybe, just maybe, Victoria was right. Maybe the only way to truly protect herself now was to shine a bright, unflattering public spotlight on the entire sordid affair, forcing the Vanderbilts to handle her and the situation much more carefully. Still, she hesitated, anxiously gnawing at her lower lip. What's in it for you? Victoria. Really? Victoria smiled. A slow, conspiratorial smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Oh, I have my own axes to grind with certain influential members of the Vanderbilt family. Let's just say, if they're terribly busy dealing with a messy public scandal, they'll have considerably less time and influence to hamper my own burgeoning business endeavors. Quid pro quo. Savannah, you get your story out, gain some protection, and I get some much-needed breathing room to expand my philanthropic brand without their incessant, unwelcome meddling. Savannah inhaled slowly, deeply. She felt like she was standing on the very edge of a precipice, about to jump headfirst into the vast, terrifying unknown. All right, she agreed, her voice barely a whisper. Let's do it. But this better not blow up in my face. Victoria. Not long after Victoria, Sterling breezily departed. Savannah found herself completely overcome with a gnawing, suffocating anxiety. She kept compulsively checking her phone, half expecting another menacing call. She had insisted that Ethan find the source of these insidious threats. But so far, he'd come up frustratingly empty-handed. Now, with Victoria actively fanning the flames, Savannah sensed she was hurtling headlong towards an unavoidable and likely disastrous collision course with the powerful Vanderbilt family. Late that night, she settled onto her balcony with a large glass of wine, the distant city lights glittering like cold, indifferent diamonds. Her phone rang, the jarring sound making her jump. Her pulse spiked erratically when she saw the dreaded unknown number flashing on the screen, summoning every ounce of her courage. She answered. She heard a shallow, raspy breath on the other end, then a low, electronically distorted voice. You still haven't left. Miss Cole, this is your final warning. Get out of Seattle, or you will live to regret it. Profoundly. The line went dead. Trembling uncontrollably, Savannah lowered the phone. A chaotic swirl of emotions, stark fear, righteous anger, stubborn defiance tugged at her. She dialed Victoria immediately, completely ignoring the fact that it was well past midnight. Her friend's crisp, businesslike voice answered, albeit noticeably groggy. It happened again, Savannah said, her voice breathless and shaky. Another threat. Victoria paused for a beat. Then we moved forward as planned. She stated decisively, "Tomorrow morning, you meet the journalist. We go public. Savannah, it's time to fight back." Savannah exhaled shakily. "All right, set it up." Within a nerve-wracking 48 hours, a sensational, thinly veiled piece appeared online on the Seattle Tribune's widely read website. The headline blared, "A Mistress's Tale: Hidden Secrets of a Seattle Elite." The article was penned by an aggressive investigative journalist known for relentlessly digging into the private lives of the city's affluent upper crust. While names were not directly mentioned, the cleverly placed clues and specific details left little doubt as to the identities of those involved. Readers swiftly and gleefully connected the dots. Speculations erupted like wildfire across all social media platforms. The Vanderbilt name was whispered, with a mixture of shock and salacious delight. In every coffee shop and cocktail lounge from Belltown to Capitol Hill, headlines in less reputable outlets teased, "Millionaire's Mistress speaks out amidst fears," and real estate scion's alleged affair and pregnant wife exposed. Olivia discovered the devastating article early one morning when her phone buzzed uncontrollably with a deluge of concerned and curious messages. She read it, her face growing progressively paler with every damning word. Ethan, still nursing his first morning coffee, saw her expression and felt a cold dread coil in the pit of his stomach. "What is it?" he demanded, his voice tight with apprehension. She shoved the phone toward him, her hand trembling. He scanned the article, the blood draining rapidly from his face. Though the journalist had cleverly altered certain identifying details, it was unmistakably, horrifyingly about them, the timelines, the pointed hints about a pregnant wife, the clear references to the scion of a well-known, powerful real estate dynasty, even direct, anonymous quotes from an unnamed mistress about fearing for her safety. Ethan slammed the phone down on the counter with a resounding crack. "Savannah," he spat, his voice laced with fury. "She must have gone to the press." Olivia's nostrils flared, her pulse thundering in her ears. She felt a wild, chaotic mix of profound betrayal and an icy, consuming cold fury. "Did you have any idea she would do this?" she accused, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. Ethan shook his head, thoroughly shaken himself. "No," he stammered. "She told me about the threats, but I never thought she'd actually. She's threatening to drag our entire family name through the mud." Olivia pressed her lips into a tight, unforgiving line. "She already has. Ethan, she already has." In the chaotic days that followed, the Vanderbilt public relations team scrambled desperately to contain the escalating damage. Vehement denials were issued. Strategic phone calls were made to quell persistent rumors, and frantic attempts were made to bury the scandalous story with larger, more positive press releases about the Vanderbilt Corporation's upcoming philanthropic initiatives. But the insidious stain had spread too far, too fast. Overnight, Ethan found himself dodging aggressive paparazzi at every building entrance. Olivia, acutely self-conscious of her growing belly, felt deeply, personally humiliated whenever she reluctantly stepped out into public. as though every pair of eyes she encountered knew her husband's shameful secret. The next shock came directly from Ethan's formidable father, William Vanderbilt Sr., a stern, uncompromising businessman in his early 60s who had single-handedly built the company from a modest construction firm into a multi-billion-dollar powerhouse empire. He summoned Ethan to his penthouse office on the top floor of the imposing Vanderbilt Tower, a gleaming steel and glass edifice that loomed majestically over downtown Seattle. The old man stood ramrod straight near the panoramic windows, his hands clasped tightly behind his back, looking out at the city he had effectively shaped. Ethan approached, bracing himself for the inevitable storm. William Sr. spun around, his steely gray eyebrows knotted in a fearsome scowl. "Explain this goddamn fiasco," he barked, his voice like thunder, thrusting a lurid tabloid magazine with a blurred, unflattering photo of Ethan on the cover directly into his son's face. The headline screamed, "Seattle's golden boy caught in shocking love triangle." Ethan bowed his head, consumed by shame. It's complicated, Dad." William Sr.'s anger was volcanic, terrifying to behold. "Your mother and I taught you better than this. Ethan, cheating on your pregnant wife, exposing the entire family to this kind of public scandal. My God, the board is already questioning our brand stability. Investors are spooked. We have properties worth billions currently in development. We cannot afford to look weak or compromised. Not now." Ethan felt his skin flush a deep, mortifying crimson. "I'm trying to manage it, Dad. But Savannah, she went to the press." William Sr.'s gaze darkened ominously. "So, you confirm it. There's actual truth to these disgusting rumors." Ethan nodded mutely, unable to meet his father's furious eyes. For a long moment, William Sr. simply stared at him, the silence in the room heavy, oppressive, and deeply ominous. Then, he snatched up a thick file from his massive mahogany desk. "I don't care what it takes. Ethan, I want this girl out of Seattle, out of your life, permanently. Buy her off. Threaten her with legal action. Do whatever it takes to make her disappear. If you don't, I will. And I assure you," his voice dropped to a chilling growl, "I won't be gentle." Ethan swallowed hard. He felt a sudden, sharp pang, vividly recalling Savannah's frantic, terrified claims that someone was already threatening her. Could his own father be the culprit? It was, he realized with a sickening lurch, not inconceivable. William Vanderbilt Sr. had never flinched from employing ruthless, even cutthroat, measures to protect the family legacy and their business interests. "Just handle it, Ethan," William Sr. growled, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Because if you fail, if you can't clean up this mess, I'll personally ensure you're cut off from everything. I'd rather hand my entire empire over to your cousin Michael in London than stand by and watch you wreck everything I built." The brutal ultimatum seared itself into Ethan's mind. He staggered out of the office, feeling battered and utterly overwhelmed. For the first time, He truly, deeply realized his father's potential, even probable, involvement in the threatening phone calls. Savannah might have been right all along. Olivia wasn't the only one in their orbit capable of serious intimidation. A few nights later, Ethan sat alone on a cold, damp bench in Volunteer Park, the city lights glimmering like distant, uncaring stars around him. He'd slipped away from the oppressive atmosphere of the estate to try and gather his fractured thoughts, to escape, if only for a little while, from Olivia's quiet, palpable heartbreak and his father's crushing ultimatum. The entire world seemed to be closing in on him, suffocating him. Then, to his surprise, he saw Emily Carter approaching through the dim, flickering glow of a nearby street lamp. Her breath misted in the cool night air as she settled onto the bench beside him. "Olivia's worried about you," Emily said gently, her voice full of genuine concern. Ethan nodded, staring down at his clenched hands. I needed some space." She tilted her head, studying him with compassionate eyes. "You've made an absolute mess of things, Ethan, a monumental mess. But for what it's worth, I know you still love Olivia. Deeply. Don't give up on her, on your marriage. She needs you to step up now, more than ever. Fix this." He heaved a ragged sigh. "I know, Emily, I know. But Savannah's not backing down easily. My father's threatening me, threatening her. My wife barely trusts me to breathe in the same room as her. And there's a baby on the way." His voice cracked with emotion. I'm terrified." Emily placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Terror can be a powerful motivator, Ethan, or it can be a prison. If you truly love Olivia, if you truly want a future with your child, you'll find a way to protect them. You have to, whatever it takes." Ethan lifted his gaze, struck by the unexpected seriousness in Emily's tone, by the fierce, unwavering loyalty for her friend that shone in her eyes. "I'll fix it," he repeated, the words a desperate vow, clinging to the thought like a drowning man to a raft. "I have to." That weekend, Ethan decided he had to confront Savannah head-on. Once and for all, he set up a meeting in a deliberately public place, an upscale, discreet hotel lounge, hoping to keep the conversation civil and, more importantly, to avoid any lurking tabloid photographers. Savannah arrived looking tense and wary, her eyes constantly scanning the room as if expecting an ambush. "I'm here," she said tersely, taking a seat across from him in a plush, velvet-lined booth. He nodded, getting straight to the point. "I won't waste your time. Savannah, the threats you've been receiving, I strongly suspect my father might be behind them. I had no idea, I swear. But now, with your interview, everything's completely exploding. He wants you gone, Savannah, by any means necessary." Savannah's jaw tightened, her expression hardening. So, he really would stoop that low. Ethan's expression was grim, his face etched with worry. He's done worse in the business world to protect his interests. You need to leave town, Savannah, for your own safety. Seriously, I'll buy your plane ticket. I'll help set you up somewhere else. Anywhere you want to go. Just please, please go. Savannah stared at him, her eyes brimming with a confusing, painful mix of emotions, deep hurt, simmering defiance, and perhaps, just perhaps, a flicker of genuine regret. Are you doing this for me, Ethan, or for you? Ethan's voice trembled, a raw, unexpected honesty surfacing. Both, he admitted, the word heavy with resignation. My father won't stop until he silences you, one way or another. I truly don't want you to get harmed, but I also desperately need to save my marriage, my family's future. You're staying here, right now, endangers everyone involved. She let out a shuddering sigh, blinking back sudden, hot tears. For a fleeting moment, the ambitious, calculating woman receded, and the vulnerable person beneath the carefully constructed facade peeked through someone lonely, someone longing for belonging, someone who had perhaps genuinely cared. So, that's it then, she whispered, her voice laced with bitterness. You and Olivia get to live happily ever after, while I just slink away, completely humiliated and ruined. Is that my reward for caring about you? He ran a frustrated hand through his already disheveled hair, his own frustration etched deeply across his face. Savannah, we both made choices here. Bad choices. But if you keep pressing this, if you insist on staying in Seattle, my father, or someone else he directs, is going to retaliate. Violently. Perhaps. You've already seen a glimpse of what they're capable of. Silence fell, thick and pregnant with unspoken fears and regrets. At last, Savannah swallowed hard, nodding slowly, reluctantly. Fine, she conceded, her voice barely audible. I'll go, but I need resources. Ethan, enough to establish myself somewhere else. Somewhere new. I won't start over with absolutely nothing. Ethan nodded vigorously, a wave of profound relief flooding through him. Of course. I'll make sure you're taken care of. I promise. She fumbled in her expensive purse, pulling out a small pen and a tiny, leather-bound notepad. Write down the details of your offer. Ethan, I need it in writing. He didn't argue. He quickly, almost desperately, scrawled out an agreement. He'd transfer a substantial amount of money into her account enough to comfortably buy a condo in another major city, plus a significant extra sum to help her get started. She studied the note intently for a moment, then carefully folded it and stuffed it into her purse. When she stood, her shoulders were quivering slightly, and she looked as though she was about to speak, perhaps to say one last, cutting remark. Instead, she just pressed her lips into a thin, resolute line and walked away, disappearing quickly into the anonymous lunchtime crowd. Over the next tense week, Ethan spent countless hours meticulously negotiating a safe, and hopefully permanent, exit strategy for Savannah. The hush money, he refused to call it that, even in his own mind, though in truth it was exactly that would be wired discreetly, untraceably. Savannah, for her part, began quietly liquidating some of her more visible assets in Seattle. She assured Victoria Sterling that she would remain in contact, but she acknowledged she had no real choice but to leave the city if she wanted to avoid further, potentially more dangerous threats. Meanwhile, Olivia discovered the final, bitter twist in this sordid saga. In the midst of Ethan's frantic, behind-the-scenes attempt to save face and protect the family name, he had made a high-level, very expensive deal with Savannah. The day Olivia found out, Ethan came home to find her in the study, silently, methodically flipping through a recent bank statement. She didn't speak for a long, agonizing moment, her face completely unreadable. "You're paying her off," Olivia said at last, her voice dangerously calm but laced with a profound, weary disbelief. Ethan exhaled slowly, bracing himself for her inevitable reaction. "Yes," he admitted quietly. I had no other choice. My father, he was escalating things, threatening her with God knows what. This was the only way to protect everyone, to make it stop." Olivia's lips parted, her eyes flashing with a storm of conflicting, painful emotions. "So, you're rewarding her for betraying me, for humiliating our entire family in public." Ethan moved closer, gently, tentatively taking her hand. "I'm not rewarding anyone. Olivia, I'm ending this. Once she's gone, truly gone, the press will eventually move on to their next scandal. We can finally focus on our child, on us." Olivia studied him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I still can't believe you've put us in this unbearable position. I agreed to try and forgive you, Ethan, but sometimes I'm so afraid I'll never truly be able to let go of what you did. How you lied, repeatedly." Ethan's heart clenched painfully in his chest. "I know," he whispered, "and I know I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you, Olivia, if that's what it takes." She closed her eyes, leaning wearily against his shoulder. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "I'm so tired, Ethan. This pregnancy is hard enough without all the scandal, the constant shame. I just want peace." He wrapped an arm around her, drawing her close, holding her tight. "I'll give you peace, Olivia. I promise. Somehow." In the final, tense stretch, events accelerated rapidly. Savannah's departure was swift. True to their fraud agreement, Ethan facilitated the discreet transfer of funds. Savannah quietly sold her penthouse and boarded a one-way flight to Los Angeles, carrying with her the heavy bitterness of her failed ambitions and shattered dreams. She did so without any further fanfare, leaving behind a swirling miasma of gossip columns that, deprived of fresh fuel, soon fizzled out. The Vanderbilt family's reaction was mixed. William Vanderbilt Sr., though still privately enraged by the entire debacle, grudgingly approved of Ethan's expensive solution. The public scandal gradually cooled, and nervous investors began to relax. The Vanderbilt name, while undeniably bruised, ultimately stood intact. Olivia's struggle, however, was far from over. She remained impressively stoic in public, dutifully attending charity events with Ethan at her side, presenting a united, if somewhat strained, front. But in private, she fought relentlessly against the insidious specters of doubt and betrayal. Each day, she wrestled with whether she truly could forgive Ethan, or if she was merely holding on to a fragile semblance of normalcy for the sake of their unborn child. Months later, the crisp, clear air of late winter settled over Seattle. Olivia was now 8 months pregnant and, despite everything, glowing with a quiet anticipation of motherhood. The Vanderbilt mansion hummed with a subdued, hopeful excitement. Ethan had left early that morning for a final inspection of a new commercial development. Olivia found herself restlessly pacing the beautifully appointed nursery, running her hands over the soft, pale cream walls. The baby's name was still a gentle matter of debate. Ethan liked Amelia for a girl, while Olivia favored Sophia for a boy. They'd surprisingly agreed on Alexander, after Olivia's beloved grandfather. Yet, as she stood there, lost in thought, she felt a sudden, sharp wave of pain seize her abdomen. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked down, her heart instantly hammering in her chest. Another sharp, undeniable twist of pain. A jolt of pure fear zinged through her. This was too soon. She still had weeks to go. She fumbled desperately for her phone, trying to dial Ethan's number, but the intensifying pain doubled her over, driving her to her knees. Emily was nowhere in sight, nor was any other staff member readily available. She began to crawl laboriously toward the door, her vision swimming alarmingly. Suddenly, she heard the distant sound of the front door opening. Heavy footsteps thundered through the foyer. To her immense relief, Ethan's anxious voice echoed through the silent house. "Olivia, Olivia, are you here?" "Ethan," she cried out, her voice strained and weak. He rushed into the nursery, his eyes widening in alarm at the sight of her on the floor. Clutching her belly in agony, she gasped, It's early. I think. Oh, God. Ethan." Panic washed over Ethan in a cold wave, but he forced himself to stay focused, to remain calm for her. He gently helped her up, half carrying her through the long hallway. "I'll get you to the hospital. Just hang on, darling. Hang on." At Seattle General Hospital, Olivia was immediately whisked away by a team of efficient nurses, while Ethan, pale and frantic, answered a barrage of urgent questions from the doctors. The baby was indeed coming prematurely, but the highly competent medical staff quickly reassured him they had everything under control. Hours later, after an agonizing, exhausting labor that tested every ounce of Olivia's formidable resilience, a baby's healthy, lusty cry finally split the tense air of the delivery room. Ethan was ushered back into the room, tears streaming unchecked down his face. Olivia lay exhausted, her dark hair plastered to her damp forehead, but a serene, almost beatific glow radiated from her eyes. The doctor gently placed a tiny, swaddled infant into her waiting arms. A beautiful little girl, the doctor announced softly, stepping back to give them a moment. Olivia's heart soared with an indescribable mixture of relief and overwhelming love. Fresh tears slipped down her cheeks as she gazed at the perfect, miniature face of her daughter. She cradled the newborn close, feeling the incredible warmth of the tiny body against hers. Ethan rested his forehead against hers, completely overwhelmed by a profound sense of gratitude and awe. "What do we name her?" Olivia whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. Ethan smiled through his own tears. "Sophia," he said gently, tenderly remembering Olivia's preference. "We'll call her Sophia, our own little miracle." In that precious, sacred moment, all the ugly betrayals and tawdry scandals seemed like a distant, almost forgotten nightmare. The present, undeniable reality of Sophia's tiny hand curled trustingly around Ethan's finger was the only truth that truly mattered. Days passed in a hazy blur of feedings, diaper changes, endless checkups, and a quiet, cautious joy. The Vanderbilts brought baby Sophia home to the Grand Mansion, where a flurry of congratulatory calls and extravagant gifts awaited them. Media coverage, eager for a positive angle, spun the birth of the new Vanderbilt heir as a heartwarming story of perseverance and family unity. A convenient narrative that quickly overshadowed the lingering, unsavory affair rumors. Behind a carefully maintained public facade, however, Ethan and Olivia remained fragile, their relationship still tentative. Sometimes, in the deep stillness of the night, Ethan would find Olivia wide awake, staring into the darkness with worry and old hurts still etched on her face. She would occasionally ask painful, probing questions. Did she ever sleep here? In our bed? Or did you ever truly love her? Ethan, the answers were always difficult, often painful for both of them, but he answered as honestly, as gently as he could, hoping that each difficult truth would help to knit their fractured relationship back together. Stitch by slow, painstaking stitch. Olivia, in turn, allowed herself to grieve fully, to process the deep wounds. She scheduled regular appointments with a compassionate therapist, determined to mend the deep fissures that threatened to poison her love for Ethan and her own peace of mind. Gradually, painstakingly, she found an unexpected wellspring of compassion for herself, for Ethan's very human failings, and even, surprisingly, for Savannah Cole, a woman who had, in her own misguided way, chased after a dream that was never truly hers to claim. The entire harrowing experience left Olivia more guarded, certainly, but also more profoundly attuned to the intricate, often messy, complexities of love, marriage, and loyalty. This is the story of how one stray, careless lipstick mark ignited a secret, bitter war behind opulent closed doors, upended a wealthy, powerful legacy, and very nearly tore a new, vulnerable family apart before it even truly began. Yet, from the ashes of profound betrayal and searing heartbreak, a fragile, Uncertain knew, start eventually. Tentatively, emerged. Sometimes, the greatest, most challenging tests of loyalty and love arise precisely when everything you believe in, everything you hold dear, is threatened by a single, damning trace of color on a pristine white collar. For Ethan and Olivia Vanderbilt, their daughter Sophia's miraculous birth became the unexpected catalyst that reminded them, and perhaps the world, that there is indeed life, and even hope, beyond scandal if you possess the courage, the resilience, and the unwavering determination to fight for it. If you found yourself swept away by this tale of hidden infidelities, shocking revelations, and ultimate, hard-won redemption, please don't let the story end here. Hit that like button to show your appreciation. Share it with friends who crave a delicious dose of high-stakes drama. And be sure to subscribe to our channel for more riveting fiction that will keep you on the very edge of your seat. Your incredible support is what keeps these stories alive and coming. Thank you for watching.